upwards of 500.
Not too bad for a beginner, huh? With that, I give you Frank Campise.
Propagating dahlias is a dimension in dahlia growing that you gotta learn to love. This time of the year, there's not much to do. Football season's over. It's too early to start gardening. But as a dahlia grower, and if you propagate, it'll keep you busy. And by propagating, you can take your tubers from last year or the tubers that you buy, and you can multiply them. You can multiply them to the point where you're going to have all the dahlias you want. You'll have dahlias for your family. You'll have dahlias for your neighbors, and you'll have dahlias to bring to the club that supports our club. And we sell them at Kinch Nursery and Botanic Gardens, and that helps us, keeps our club supported. Now, there's several ways to propagate dahlias. When I first started growing dahlias in a rooting medium, like Oasis, well, that's the method that we're using now. But torpedo sand was a gritty sand. That was a method used back when I started growing dahlias. And oil dry, which is a granulated clay, like kitty litter, that was working really well. We were so happy when that was came available. But then we discovered Oasis, and the Oasis Q revolutionized propagating. And by using the Oasis, if you use it properly, you should be able to do about 90% of your cuttings. Here's a dry one. 90% of your cuttings you will be able to root. And it's fun to do, and it's light, it's clean, and you can do it just right under a fluorescent light. This is the method I use, and many of our members use and have fun doing this. Like a good example is Dr. David Sales. He was looking for his Oasis. He says, I got to get my Oasis so I can get started. Well, he'll propagate about 400 dahlia plants and good quality plants. And he needs 50 for his yard. But he'll donate 200 to our club. He'll bring dahlias to the hospital for the nurses and doctors. And it's fun for him to do. And it's fun for him to grow dahlias. And it makes it. And another thing, by making dahlia cuttings from Oasis, is you develop a head start on your growing season. Dahlias were always known as the fall flower, the September flower, and they started blooming in September. And that's when the shows would start. It would happen in September. But when you grow from cuttings, you have a root system, and you have an established plant. And your plant is usually about 12 to 15 inches high with a root system before it goes in the ground. And you plant the end of May. So when you plant from tubers, you stand a chance of that tuber rotting in the ground. There's a certain amount that will not take hold. And your plant will start growing. It'll get to be about 15 inches high, and all of a sudden it'll quit. And you'll blame the cutworms and everything. But what happened is the tuber never developed roots. The energy from the tuber was exhausted, and the plant died. But when you plant from a cutting, you have a root system, and it will it'll grow right off the bat. because it has a root system, and it will develop tubers.
It's 30 days in the pot.
Go ahead. Explain it.
Okay, just to cover what Frankie said to show you as a demonstration here. This plant here, it's called a deer patty. It's a third-year introduction, the one that we developed here in the society over 2 years ago. But anyway, what this was, as Frankie was talking about doing his cuttings, and he mentioned this thing about putting it in the ground and waiting. I've got to make an appearance at a garden club in a couple of weeks, so I started a little bit early, so many of you probably don't have them looking like this. But this was a cutting that was in a wedge 30 days ago that was rooted. And then I transferred it into the 4-inch pot with the soilless mix. And so what happened is that I went from what Frank has here, the small plants of this size, to something like this. It took 30 days under the fluorescent lights at home. But that's what Frank was talking about. Now this would be ready to go in the garden with no problem. I don't want to turn it upside down and show you, but it's all full of roots underneath. I don't want to get a mess up here. But that's what Frank was talking about. That's what they look like. This is safe when the weather's nice. If you have a plant like this, plop it in your garden and you'll be ready to go.
Dan, did you pinch it because it's already so many?
This one is pinched. I pinched it about a week ago. So it won't just keep growing. It'll grow a little bushier. Yeah.
How long can you, will you have to put it in a bigger pot pretty soon, or?
No, well, if I were continuing to keep this until June and middle of May, I would probably transfer it to a 6-inch pot, a pot like this size. So the roots won't get all bound up in the pot. But normally, if you allow the reasonable amount of time, from the time you put your wedge into the soilless mix, it's already rooted. For that to get established in a 4-inch pot, you can do it within about 2 to 3 weeks, and you're ready to go. Even if it's earlier, as long as there's a root system part of that wedge, you're going to be okay if the weather's warm and the soil is up to about 55, 60 degrees or warmer. You won't have any problem.
Another thing I want to bring up is that when you make a cutting from a tuber, the plant goes into a situation where it lost its growth, and nature allows more shoots to develop. Where you take a cutting, and there's some examples here you can come and see, where you make a cutting, anywhere from 2 to 3 new shoots come out alongside. So in other words, you're multiplying your stock, okay? And the new growth keeps coming, and you can take them off and plant them. But you got to remember, if you after you take a certain amount of cuttings, your plants, your new shoots might start coming spindly, and when that happens, just destroy it. You've gone the distance. The tubers are getting tired, and they're not producing strong, healthy shoots. When that happens, just disregard it, because you've gotten upwards of 6 cuttings from it. And Magos, what he does is he'll take a plant, and he'll put tags in the plant. Like if he wants to take 6 cuttings from that tuber, he'll put 6 labels in there with the name of it on, and when those are exhausted, he'll know that he's taken 6 cuttings from it, and that's plenty. And then he won't take any more cuttings from that. Yes?
When the tubers start to go and their shoots start dwindling,
Yeah.
do you still hang on to them and plant them out, just let them grow in your container, and then come last frost, stick them in the garden?
Once they start to diminish, I pitch it. I get rid of it, because I've gotten plenty of cuttings out of it, and it's getting tired. So that's weak stock. You don't want to plant with weak stock.
If you got your 6 good shoots off of it,
Yeah.
and it's throwing another 6 puny shoots. Could you not cut off 5 of those puny ones and let that 6th single
Okay.
one go?
Here, let me give you an answer to
And
that.
put it in the ground
Here,
outside?
as an
Okay.
example. This was a tuber, again, of that deer patty. What I did was, it was just a small clump originally, and I took 3 or 4 cuttings off of that tuber. And I said, I don't want to take any more, like Frankie said, but what I want to do is I want to see if I can get this thing to grow into a nice plant with the tubers attached. So what I did is I made sure I found the best stem that I had left on that clump out of about 3 or 4. Shaved off everything else down into the tuber so there'd be no little plantlets coming up. Only left 1 stem growing. And that I potted up into this 1-gallon pot, put it on the lights to see whether or not it would produce a nice plant. You can see that it's got a pretty nice, about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch wide stem on there. It's very good, and this one would theoretically be ready to go in the garden at the appropriate time. But this was saved from that little clump where I had taken the original 4 or 5 cuttings.
Thank you.
Now, what are you gonna do? In about 2 years, everybody will be taking leaf cuttings, where you can take 30 or 40 of them off of one bush.
We'll sell 5,000 plants at our sale instead of 1,000.
That's what you can do with
Okay.
leaf cuttings.
Right, well,
All right, we're gonna-
whatever it takes, we'll,